You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Call this meeting of the Branford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is Thursday, April 16th, 2020. This is our regular meeting. And what I will do is first I'll introduce members of the commission and staff. When you hear your name, you can raise your hand. John Lust.
Right here.
Thanks. And then Joe Chadwick.
Present.
Joe Viuzzo.
Present.
Fred Russo.
Present.
Paul Higgins.
Present.
Marcy Pelusi.
Present.
And I'm Chuck Anders, chair. Our staff this evening is Harry Smith. Our new assistant planner, Caitlin Piazza. And also our clerk recording secretary, Michelle Martin. This is a video, this meeting is being audio and video recorded, and we're operating under some special rules. And so I'm gonna ask, well, before I ask Harry to explain what we're doing, let me get a quick intro from I did the introductions, but you notice there's a new staff face here. We have a new assistant planner, Caitlin Piazza. Caitlin, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Hi. So I'm Caitlin. I just moved to Branford about 2 weeks ago with my husband, so brand new, still exploring. I'm originally from New York, and I've been working in planning for about 4 years now, first with an engineering firm in New York, and then with the town of Shelburne, Vermont, doing their development review and some zoning enforcement. My latest venture is getting my master's degree from Cornell University in historic preservation planning. I'm just super excited to be working with you guys, and hopefully we'll all be meeting in person shortly.
Great. Thanks, Caitlin, and we're excited to have you aboard. With that, Harry, I'm going to turn over to Harry to go over the ground rules.
Okay. I think I'm going to turn it actually over to Caitlin quickly to do a quick, just 4-slide PowerPoint about Zoom, just so those of you who are participating at home, if you're just very, very new to it, can get an idea of the very basic controls. It'll take about 5 minutes tops. So take it away, Caitlin.
Okay, guys, I'm going to share my screen, so just bear with me for a moment. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Oh, now I've cut off my own wording. Hold on 1 second. All right, so just so everybody knows, everyone who enters into this meeting is muted upon entry, and no one is required to use their video. For those members of the public who wish to submit questions or comments concerning an application, just be sure to do so only during the public comment portion of that specific application that you want to address. And please remember that each time you speak, you need to state your full name for the record. The audio and video of this meeting is being recorded through Zoom, but it is also being recorded through BCTV. The full recording will be available on the site within 7 days. BCTV is also broadcasting this live on public access television and on their website. If you've called in only by phone, you can view it in those two places now. You have a few options for participation if you wish to comment or have any questions. One of them is going to be the raise your hand feature, and the other is going to be the chat feature. So just really quick, yeah, you can see all this. So just the basic features. I would suggest that if you're not speaking, you mute yourself by using, let me just zoom in. By using the microphone icon, just to mute and unmute. You can also start and stop your video at any time. If you, well, we'll go over this a little bit later, but the participants window will allow you to see everyone who's participating in the window or in the meeting, and the chat will allow you to contact the host of the meeting, which would be Hairier or I at the moment. And to access those icons, you just need to hover your cursor over the bottom of the screen. So first, the chat feature, you can just select the chat icon at the bottom of your screen, and a chat box is going to appear in the right-hand portion of your screen. And at the lower right, you can submit comments. Please remember to type your full name and the application number you wish to comment on, as well as numbering each individual comment or question so it's really clear for the record.
That's for the public.
So those will be answered in the order that they are received, and they'll be read out by Harry. You can see in the right-hand corner of my screen, you can select who you do the chat to. The second option is going to be the raise your hand feature, which can be found by first clicking the participants icon right here. And then that will pop up all the participants, and you'll be able to see raise your hand in the bottom right-hand corner. Harry, again, is going to keep track of who's raising their hand, and they'll be answered in the order that they're received. As soon as you're introduced, please, again, state your name. And every time you speak after that, again, state your name. And that is pretty much it. I don't know if we're going to go over questions, but if you have any, you can submit them to the chat.
I see Marcy. Sorry to have you muted. My apologies. I can't unmute you for some reason. I don't know why.
Because I was muted on my end.
I think I had you unmuted. The public will be speaking during the public hearing portion. So what we're going to do, the plan is to recognize people through the raise hand feature, those folks who are participating in Zoom. If you are calling in and you're not a member of the commission, I think everyone has been unmuted at this point, unless you've unmuted yourself again. Then you can use a feature on your phone, just hit *9, and that will show up as a raised hand on my screen so I can see that you would like to speak and I can unmute you. So we'll do this sequentially as we go through public comment section. So I'm just gonna pull up the agenda quickly. So can everyone see the meeting agenda on the screen, hopefully? So most of this is already covered by Caitlin, but I just want to highlight that as some folks might have seen, if your computer doesn't have a microphone working, of course, we won't be able to hear you. And you may want to try calling in just so, and there's no problem with participating as a Zoom participant, also through a voice call through your phone. The other thing I want to stress is that you don't necessarily need to have your name displayed on Zoom. You can use a pseudonym. I think most people have signed in, but it's not required unless you want to speak, then we need your name. I think that's everything other than the fact that I want to highlight at the bottom here, page 1. There is a hot link, so a control click of your mouse or your keypad will take you to this folder in the town's Dropbox account, which has all the documents that are referred to during the meeting for all the applications. So they are organized by application type. The draft minutes are there, the agenda is there, and everything can be found in that if you want to scroll through it. Unfortunately, they're mostly listed by exhibit number, so but all that information is there and it can be viewed after the meeting as well. So I think I'll just stop there and turn it back over to you, Chuck.
Thank you, Harry. So we have, normally at this point, we read the call of the public hearings. Our secretary reads the notice of public hearing. I don't know if we've provided that to Marcy. So Harry, do you have a legal notice that we could read?
I do. I can read that out. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Legal notice, Town of Branford, the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Branford, Connecticut hereby gives notice of a public hearing, to be held on Thursday, April 16th, 2020 at 8 p.m. by remote technology as authorized by Executive Order 7B and 7I to consider the following. Application number 19-11-1.1, re-subdivision 15 lot located at 99 Todd's Hill Road, Vigliotti Construction, care of Frank Vigliotti, applicant, the state of Daniel P. Cosgrove, care of Susan Barnes, owner. Item number 2, application number 19-12.4, special exemption for interior lot, lot 4 of 15 lot re-subdivision located at 99 Todd's Hill Road, Vigliotti Construction, care of Frank Vigliotti, applicant, the state of Daniel P. Cosgrove, care of Susan Barnes, owner. Application number 19-12.5, special exception for interior lot, lot 5 of a 15 lot re-subdivision located at 99 Todd's Hill Road, Vigliotti Construction, care of Frank Vigliotti, applicant, state of Daniel P. Cosgrove, care of Susan Barnes, owner. And we have 4 more, just so in case you're wondering how long this is going to go on. It's application number 19-12.6, special exception for interior lot, lot 6 of a 15 lot re-subdivision located at 99 Todd's Hill Road, Vigliotti Construction, care of Frank Vigliotti, applicant, estate of Daniel P. Cosgrove, care of Susan Barnes, owner. Application number 19-12.7, special exception for interior lot, lot 8 of a 15 lot re-subdivision located at 99 Todd's Hill Road, Vigliotti Construction, care of Frank Vigliotti, applicant, state of Daniel P. Cosgrove, care of Susan Barnes, owner. Application number 19-12.8, special exception for interior lot, lot 9 of a 15 lot subdivision, re-subdivision located at 99 Todd's Hill Road, Vigliotti Construction, care of Frank Vigliotti, applicant, state of Daniel P. Cosgrove, care of Susan Barnes, owner. And finally, application number 19-12.9, special exception for interior lot, lot 13 of a 15 lot re-subdivision located at 99 Todd's Hill Road, Vigliotti Construction, care of Frank Vigliotti, applicant, state of Daniel P. Cosgrove, care of Susan Barnes, owner. At said hearings, all persons who have the right to be heard and written communications will be received. A copy of the application is on file at the Planning and Zoning Commission's office, at the Planning and Zoning Department, 1019 Main Street, and on the town's website through its Dropbox account I mentioned earlier.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Harry. Again, try to remember to say your name before you speak. I think I've spoken a couple of times already where I have not done that, so I'll try to be better as we go forward. So what we will do, we'll follow our normal format for public hearings with the caveats that we presented, which is that the applicant will go first, make its presentation, refer to exhibits. Afterwards, we turn it over for summaries of staff reports and questions from commission members. And then after that, we open it up to the public for public comments. And again, we've gone through the procedure of the 2 methods by which the public can comment, either by raising your hand through the chat, and that'll be monitored by Harry and Caitlin. And then after that, the applicant will have the opportunity to address any public comment, and then we may or may not close the public hearing depending on how it goes. So with that, we'll go now to our agenda. And item number 1 on our agenda is the Second Dino and Sons Bittersweet Partners LLC, 779-803 East Main Street, which is a special exception for a laboratory office. This is a matter that we opened, I believe, at our February 20th meeting, and we continued it at our last meeting. My understanding is that, Barry, you can correct me, that we also like to open and continue this matter to our next May 7th meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the applicants consented to a continuation to work out some concerns brought up mainly by the town engineer. They've also offered an additional time extension to take us to the April 16th meeting. So we have to continue it to the April 16th meeting.
This is April 16th.
I'm sorry, the 7th, the May 7th meeting, my apologies.
Okay, Chucky Anders chair. Okay, so for item number 1, we will continue that. Again, Chuck Anders chair, we're continuing that to our May 7th regular meeting. That brings us then to items number 2 through 8 on our public hearing agenda. And this concerns the Vigliotti construction, estate of Daniel B. Cosgrove, 99 Todd's Hill Road, special exceptions for interior lots, as well as the re-subdivision for that. And just by way of background, this is a matter that we had opened and actually closed the public hearing on this matter, heard from the applicant in the public. But we had some concern because during our deliberations, we were raising some issues that I think that the applicant really had not had an adequate opportunity to address. So we thought it would be appropriate to reopen the public hearing to allow the applicant and, of course, any public who would want to comment on that to address additional issues. So with that, I will ask if the applicant's representative is here and would like to proceed.
Jim, I'm going to unmute you. I think you're unmuted at this point.
Okay, Jim Freddy, Criscolo Engineering, representing Frank Vigliotti. Also on here with us is Tim Lee, and I believe Tim has forwarded a letter that I think he's going to discuss before we get too much farther here. I'm going to give it over to Tim.
Okay. I have your letter. I could share it on the screen if you like. Just let me know. You should be unmuted.
Hi, this is Tim Lee. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can hear you fine.
Okay. For the record, it's Tim Lee. I represent Vigliotti Construction. To follow up on what the chairman was saying, this is a matter that the commission had closed and then reopened. And my understanding was that the commission, during their deliberation, had raised the question as to whether some of the rear lots could be better serviced by a town road. So when they left the meeting, the Vigliottis met with Jim Freddy, and they took a look at the plan with the thought of putting a town road in, and whether if they put a town road in, they would be able to get some additional lots. So the long and short of it is that they did meet with Jim. They did a basic outline of the property. And if they were to put in a town road, they probably could get 2 and maybe 3 additional lots, making it a 18-lot subdivision instead of a 15-lot subdivision. However, upon further review, they came to the determination that it wasn't feasible to put a road in there for a number of different reasons. One, it would involve redesigning the entire project. It would involve going back to the Wetlands Commission. It would involve going back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it would set back the project for approximately, a year or so with the re-engineering and the resubmissions. In addition, as the commission's reviewed the plans in the past, there's a fair amount of wetlands on the property. A lot of the lots, as they presently exist, have wetlands on them, are located at least within the wetland review area. If we were to put in a town road to town road standards, we would be having a greater impact on the wetlands. We're not sure whether the Wetlands Commission would look favorably upon that or not. In addition, putting in a town road would increase the amount of impervious surface, would change the drainage character of the project. So based on all of those factors, the Vigliottis came to the conclusion that they would like to proceed with the version of the application that they had submitted to the commission 2 months ago, which was the 15 lot subdivision with the 6 rear lots. And that's the one we're going to be asking the commission to take action upon. They did make a good faith effort. They did sit down with Jim Freddy, and they did go through the possibility of putting a town road in. Obviously, they're developers, and if they could have gotten a couple more lots, they would have been happy to do that. But the way it was going to work out, it just was not feasible, either from a time perspective, an economic perspective, and even from the possibility of getting 2 lots or maybe 3 lots. It just wasn't really a viable alternative for them. That is more or less a summary of what my letter to the commission dated April 13th, 2020 stated. Jim Freddy, as you heard, is also on the line. Jim can take you through a little bit more of the thought process with regard to the road, but the conclusion we reached was that it really was not a feasible alternative for this particular piece of property.
Chucky Anders, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Freddy, do you have additional comments?
I think Jim Freddy, Criscolo Engineering, I think that Tim covered pretty much the basis of our conversation. The other minor engineering complexities, if we were to build an actual town road where all the driveways would be entering and exiting off of Todd Road in one place, really it should be lined up with the road across the street. You have a cross street that's in very close proximity. To not line them up creates a traffic nightmare, and because of where the wetlands are on the property, it would be almost very difficult to try to accomplish that. So it doesn't really make that a lot of sense there in that regard also. But as far as all the other issues, the big issues, Attorney Lee's already covered. So.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Freddy. One question for me, and then I'll open up for other questions from commission members. Assuming if you did an interior town road and you put, I guess, 3 more lots on there, am I correct that the amount of the open space would be lessened?
Jim Freddy, yeah, it would be somewhat lessened by at least an acre or so, probably 2.
Okay. Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Freddy. Anything else from the applicant on this?
Not at this time.
Okay. Chuck Anders, Chair. Okay. Questions or comments from commission members or staff?
Chuck, Harry Smith, Town Planner. I can put up the plan just so everyone can see it. That's useful. Does that sound like a good idea?
Chuck Anders, Chair, why don't you just put it up there and then...
you can take it right down.
Yeah, take it down, but at least refresh our recollection here.
So everyone can see the plan at this point?
Yes.
Okay. So again, this is Todd's Hill Road. Running my cursor around, coming around Parish Farm Road. A couple lots here up on Cherry Hill. This is the house that's currently there now, Cosgrove Family Estate House. One of the rear lots here, another rear lot to the east of the existing house. There's another rear lot here, almost opposite Bryan Road. And one here right next to that one that comes in. Again, Jim, feel free to jump in. I'm having trouble reading this a little bit. And I think there's one last one that comes down here that's shared between these two. So these are 2 frontage lots. These are 2 rear lots with a shared driveway, 2 rear lots here with a shared driveway, a single rear lot, 1 driveway, and that's a frontage lot with a driveway, frontage lot, and a rear lot with a driveway, and another rear lot with a driveway, and 2 more frontage lots.
Jim Freddy, that lot that's directly across from O'Brien, we did talk about flipping that, and I think at the last meeting we talked about flipping that and putting the driveway together with the one in the back, but
Okay.
as an option.
I think this is the latest plan in the file, though. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Jim Freddy again. Each one of these lots will need approval through staff anyway. So I'm just saying, as an option, that one more driveway could really be eliminated there.
Okay, Harry Smith again. Thank you. I'm going to put this down then. Again, Harry Smith.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Harry. Any questions from commission members?
Can we see Marcy Paluzzi here? Can we see the plan with the 18 lots? And can they address other rear lots that are in the neighborhood? Because that is, I forget how it's worded, but it's supposed to be consistent with the local neighborhood that other rear lots are common and commonly used. And I think this is our first introduction of rear lots in this part of town.
Jim Freddy, I don't actually have a map available to put up right now. What we had done with just pencil and paper wasn't something that we could easily make electronic. I guess to your point about the rear lots, I could possibly take the assessor's map and try to highlight, anything that's in the nearby vicinity. But at this point, we didn't do that because, again, we were trying to focus on the plan that we had presented. We did look at the possibility of the open space residential development, which I don't think would yield any more lots, but they would be much smaller. We did look at possibly putting them all as frontage lots. That would add a lot more driveways to the existing roads, which we thought was not a good idea. Also, the lots would be smaller, which would not really be in keeping with the neighborhood. Most of the neighborhood lots are 20,000 or so square feet. So the traditional subdivision seemed to be the best fit for the neighborhood.
The other point, this is Tim Lee. The other point I would add is that the regulation when addressing interior lots says the commission can also consider the preservation of natural character, drainage, configuration, accessibility, and topography. So basically the rear lots do allow us to preserve the additional open space. So there are and preserve some of the natural characteristics of the property. As part of the subdivision, we are providing 25 acres of open space. So by having some of these rear lots, it does help us achieve that goal in the rear lot regulation.
Thank you, Chuck Anders, Chair. Any other questions from commission members? If not, we'd like to open it up to the public, and I'll turn it over to Harry to figure out, and Caitlin to figure out how we do this.
Okay, Harry Smith, Town Planner. I'm scanning the participant list. If anyone would like to speak, please indicate by raising your hand if you're on Zoom, or it's against *9 if you're on a phone. I don't see that. Oh, see Jamie Cosgrove and Claire Adamo. I think, Jamie, I saw you first, so. I'm trying to unmute you. I think you're ready to talk. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Jamie Cosgrove, 27 Parish Farm Road. the one thing I'd like to just have the commission consider, there's obviously a significant portion of this property is going to remain open space. However, I feel it's the obviously land conservation is a important aspect of preserving the open space, but I think we can also make a argument that the use of this open space that we enjoy in Branford is used for passive recreation. A significant, if not pretty much all of the land that will remain open space is understandably wet and wouldn't allow for any recreation beyond passive, I would imagine. However, I do think it's important for the public to have the option to use the property. I know there was discussions regarding it being transferred to Regional Water Authority. I have made some an outreach to the RWA, again, not in a formal manner as yet, but in hopes to try to secure public access to the property. However, so at this time, I'd like to request, if possible, the commission consider that if this was to, when the subdivision is approved, that a condition of approval allows for public access to the property. I don't know if that's something that could be considered prior to it actually being filed, and that it goes to an entity that would allow, as I said, public access on the property. As you know now, regional water property is not open for public to use. So I think there's some potential there. I think it would be an asset, not only for this area of town, but the town as a whole, to be able to enjoy that property. And I think that meets the intent of an open space subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you, Chucky and Erst. Thank you, Mr. Cosgrove. Are there other members of the public that would wish to comment?
Yes.
We have a Claire Adamo who is, I think, unmuted.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. Claire Adamo, 8 Avon Road in Branford. Two issues I'd like to talk about. One is in support of Jamie Cosgrove's idea. It has to do with the population around here in this particular area. We have many joggers. We have families who take their children on strollers. We have walkers. And as I had mentioned at a previous meeting, it's a little bit dangerous. I'm supporting open space, not only for the walking, jogging, but also the scenic and just the availability of space that is not on roadways where people drive. And I had also, in my second point, was brought up the idea of sidewalks surrounding this new property division, going from Cherry Hill Road all around up until Todd's Hill. I know it was considered, I believe by Mr. Russo, you had discussed it at the last meeting, and how it would end in nothing. It would end at the top of Todd's Hill, next to a house. But in my idea, when I see people walking around, I think that safety net of the sidewalk around there would be very beneficial. And I know there was talk that because this would be a new development, it was a possibility. So I had just wondered if you gentlemen and ladies had given any thought to that concept. Thank you.
Thank you, Chucky and Erst. Thank you very much. Maybe we can, in response to that question, as the applicant consider the possibility of sidewalks, I guess from Cherry Hill to Todd's Hill. I guess the other thing to keep in mind is there's a back entrance to the Murphy School up the road too, I suppose. So I don't know how much, there's actual, pedestrian or kids walking to the school, but thought I'd ask.
Jim Freddy, Criscolo Engineering.
I think Jim is muted.
Harry Smith, Town Planner. I've just unmuted him. I don't think he was.
There you go.
What happened? Jim
Freddy, Criscolo Engineering. Hear me now?
We can hear you now. Your video is kind of sketchy. It seems to be choppy. Just so you know, it might be your internet connection.
No.
We can hear you. I think you might.
Yeah, it is getting choppy.
Yeah. If there's anything else, anybody else using the internet, maybe they could, in your house, maybe that would help. I don't know.
Yeah. The sidewalk option across Todd's Hill is a possibility. Once you turn the corner heading up Parish Farm Road, the topography starts to become really difficult pretty quick. I don't know that we could actually put them in on that side, but I guess I'd have to defer to the commission. Certainly their option. We'd rather, obviously the developer would rather not have to put them in, but if it's a requirement and it's a way to get this approved, I guess we'd be amenable to that.
Chuck Anders, Chair. So I think Ms. Adama was mentioning between Todd's Hill and Cherry Hill, and then you would avoid, I guess, the hill. Is that feasible?
Jim Freddy, yeah, actually it's from, I think she meant from Cherry Hill across Todd's Hill, across this frontage to Parish Farm Road intersection.
Okay. Right. Right, yeah, that's right, to where the intersection of Parish Farm. And Chuck Anders shares, so you're saying that if you had to go up Parish Farm, that there's a topography issue, but there's less of a topography issue just between Cherry Hill and the intersection with Parish Farm.
Correct.
Okay, Chuck Anders, Chair. Are there any other public comments?
There's one other individual here, so I'm just going to unmute him. I don't have the full name. So, sir or madam, if you would state your name when you start speaking.
Yeah, it's Richard Vaughn, 74 Todd's Hill Road.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've spoken before on this issue. Again, I'm not opposed to the development. I just feel that, again, this is one of the most unique pieces of property in Branford and in Connecticut. And I just want to see it done correctly. We talked about trying to connect the neighborhood and the community of Branford together. Again, a town road, I understand, is financially difficult, but it's also something that might tie it all together. If you had a crescent road or something that came through off of maybe Cherry Hill into and off of Todd's Hill at some point, something that would allow the neighborhood, again, more access to the area, more passive recreation, which Mr. Cosgrove was speaking about, and the other lady about the open space. Those things would connect and allow the neighborhood to become one. Again, it's just such a pristine piece of property that to see it chopped up, I know Vigliotti's do a nice job with things, but just to take the time and make it something that really would be a jewel in the eyes of Branford. It's something that could possibly be done with this piece of property.
Chuck Anders, Chair, thank you. Are there any other persons who want to comment?
Yeah, Ms. Adama would like to speak again.
Okay.
Thank you. Claire Adamo, 8 Avon Road again. My vision was to have it go entirely around that Cosgrove piece of property, if you're understanding correctly, from down at the dead end where there's going to be 2 houses. I don't know what the numbers are. And then circle around past the stop sign going up Todd's Hill, and then up Parish Farm. I'm not asking for the houses that already exist there to have sidewalks. I know that's a difficulty and it's probably not part of this plan. But somehow it would be amazing if you could couple this sidewalk to a town road, as the other two gentlemen had mentioned, to let us enjoy encircling the property for safety reasons and for enjoying the countryside. I think that would be a wonderful consideration. Thank you.
Okay. Chucky Anders, Chair. Thank you. Any other other public comments?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. I do not see any more. So maybe going once, twice, three times. I don't see anybody else that has raised their hand.
Chuck Anders, Chair. I have a question for Mr. Cosgrove, if he's still around here. You indicated that you would like to see some sort of public access and would prefer that as some sort of a condition of approval. Do you have a location where that would be? Do you have an idea where that could be located? Where the access way into the open space would be?
I think it could be located right off of down Cherry Hill Road, where they currently access the property, down right before you get to the water company property.
Okay.
I don't know if you could pull it up again, maybe, Harry, and
Sure.
The commission can see it. And actually, that would probably be a location where you could, provide, a couple parking spots as well. So if you were, can you go down Cherry Hill Road and past those last two houses?
Yeah, let me scroll up a little bit. Around here?
Yeah. So right there, there's a gravel drive going into the property.
Yeah.
Right there, that would be, I think, a location people can access. When you follow it around, there are a couple other areas, even, up on Parish Farm, where the open space property will connect to even Parish Farm. Now, that wouldn't be accessible through a vehicle, nor should it be. I mean, this is more for, people to enjoy passively, hike through it. I think there's a lot of potential. You have, through that property, you have a stand of mature trees, and reestablish the wooded areas through there. There's a lot of area, the meadows can be reestablished, and with some correct stewardship of the property in terms of, pollinators and other things like that.
Harry Smith, Town Planner. Is there any agreement by the water company? I know they've made an offer to take the property, and there's been maybe some discussions, but that really hasn't crystallized into any kind of something that's been documented at this point. Is that correct? In terms of the public access?
No, oh, no. As far as between the town and regional water,
well,
no, but I don't know.
The regional water possibly accepting the open space with the provision that they would allow public access.
Yeah, so I have not heard any. I don't know if the applicant has had any discussions with RWA, which they have granted that. But again, I don't know in terms of the approval process, if it's necessary for the commission to identify an entity, or if they can identify maybe not a specific entity, but an entity that would take ownership, deeded open space, and with public access.
At this point, and maybe Jim or Tim, you could correct me if I'm wrong, I understand the Water Authority, again, it's Harry Smith, Town Planner, has documented that they are willing to take it, but they did not mention any kind of caveat for public access. They're just willing to accept it, as my understanding, as open space, and that's the proposal currently on the table that I believe the subdivision regulations require an entity to be identified that would be willing to accept the open space. And there's categories of which type of entity are allowable under the subdivision regulations.
Hi, this is Tim Lee. I'm new to this application, so I can't speak to the history. I know that Frank Vigliotti had reached out to the Regional Water Authority. The Regional Authority was willing to take the property. I don't know if there were discussions regarding public access to the property or not.
Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering. Tim is right. There was a letter from the Regional Water Authority stating their interest. I know, other than Mr. Cosgrove reaching out, I believe someone from the Land Trust reached out also to them to try to maybe share some responsibility in having public access there, but I haven't heard the results of any of that.
Okay. Are there, so let me see, Regional Water Authority, is that regarding?
That's a comment letter. So
right.
Keep going through here. I'm going to unshare my screen, so.
Right. Okay, well, is there any other additional comments from the applicant or the public at this time?
Well, my only thought on the issue of the open space is the regulation does require us to find an entity willing to take the open space. The Water Authority is willing to take the open space. Quite frankly, once we deed the open space, it's out of our hands whether they're going to allow public access or not. If the commission is looking to come up with a condition of approval, my suggestion would be that we have an entity, that we give the open space to an entity, and the preference of the commission would be that it's an entity that would allow public access to the property.
Okay.
Something to that effect. We're happy, like I said, we're deeding the property out. So if that entity allows public access, that's fine with us. And we're happy to try to find an entity that would allow public access. And if that's the RWA, that's all the better.
Chucky Anders, Chair. Harry, do the regulations require that the entity be identified?
They do. While I'm looking that up, just to get the words in front of me, I'm going to share my screen again and show the letter from the Water Authority. So we're going to take a look at that.
Okay. So it looks like they're interested.
Yes, does look like they're interested. Harry Smith, Town Planner again. So the regulations, the subdivision regulations say the subdivider shall designate which entity is or entities are proposed to own the open space to ensure its permanent protection is provided in these regulations. There's an order of preference for ownership, starting with the town. Number 2 is a nonprofit organization acceptable to the commission, legally constituted to accept and maintain open space for conservation purposes. 3 is a neighborhood association or private organization having rules and policies to protect and preserve the open space area that have been reviewed and approved. Those are the rules by the commission. Number 4 is such open space is deeded to a private organization or a private association shall provide in such deed the ownership shall revert to the town or other conservation organization for recreational conservation purposes. If such corporation or association shall cease to exist or shall relinquish ownership. So that's what the regulations have to say on it.
Okay. Chuck Anders, Chair. Okay. Is there, so what I contemplate that if, I contemplate that as a condition of approval, that public access will be a component of the condition of approval, and the Regional Water Authority being identified as the entity based on the letter. And if it turns out the Regional Water Authority says, oh, we don't want that condition, then they would have to come back and seek an amendment if we approve it and find somebody else, because I think, I don't know, that's how what I would anticipate at least. So does that, Chuck Anders Chair, to the applicant, does that sound okay? Would you have
This
any
is
objection to that?
Tim Lee. I don't think we would have an objection to that. So once again, the RWA is our designated entity based on the commission's desire of the commission. If they vote that way, the commission's going to impose a condition that the public space have the open space have public access. In the event the RWA declines to grant public access, you would want us to come back to the commission with an alternative entity to take the open space. Is that a fair summary?
Correct.
Okay.
Chuck Anders Chair.
Tim Lee, no objection to that.
Okay, Chuck Anders Chair again, and because I don't want to reopen this public hearing again. Anyone else want to say anything? Or any further comments? I see a hand up for Mr. Cosgrove. Do you have additional comments?
Just for clarification, is the Harry, when you were reading the regulations, does it say, is that pertain to prior to the specific entity needs to be named prior to approval or prior to submission of the subdivision? So prior to the map being submitted to the town?
I believe it's prior to the subdivision being approved. It does say which entities or entities, so it could contemplate a couple of choices possibly that would both be approved by the commission, and that would be then at the discretion of the applicant to pick which one.
Thank you.
We've got, I think, Anthony Alphone. I'm going to unmute him.
Hi, thank you. Anthony Alphone. Just a quick question. I know the land trust was interested in possibly acquiring the open space at the last public hearing, but they were having difficulty accessing the property to kind of assess whether they could maintain it in the future. Does anybody know if they've had access to the property to kind of assess that and see if that was something that they were willing to take on? I know cutting grass isn't really their forte, but they were looking at possibly an open pollinator type trail system, but they couldn't access the actual property to assess that.
Jim Preddy, Critical Engineering. I'm unaware of them getting on the property.
Okay. Has anybody attempted to reach out to the land trust to set up a time for them to access it? I know they said that they've reached out. I just don't know what the outcome was of that. This is going back to probably February.
This is Tim Lee speaking. Vigliotti Construction has a contract to purchase the property. They don't have the right to grant access to anybody to access the property. So the land trust would have to make contact with the actual owners of the property and get their consent to walk the property. And I'm not sure that they've acquired that consent.
Okay. I didn't know if that was possible to make that or see if that was a possibility before we actually made the Regional Water Authority the recommended open space, or the person to take over the open space, if there's another body that's interested in it.
Chuck Anders Chair, my recollection, first I think it's the applicant's choice, as long as they meet the criteria, but my recollection was that Bill Horn did say that they thought the Regional Water Authority was a qualifying entity that would be able to do it. That's what I remember his testimony at the hearing. But I don't remember a specific say, hey, we wish you'd choose us over the water company. I just don't remember that testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Chuck Anders Chair. Any other comments by anybody?
Yeah, Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering. Just taking a quick look at the plans regarding the sidewalk issue. Yeah, the existing lots that are up on the west side of Parish Farm Road that are off of this property are steep in the front yards, and sidewalks would be nearly impossible there. But a good portion of our parcel that is along Parish Farm Road would also have the same topography issues. But even if we start where that ends, we're talking about looks like over 2,500 linear feet, almost half a mile of sidewalk, per the suggestion of one of the public members, from those 2 lots up Cherry Hill Road all the way around the intersection.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Freddy, Chucky, and to share. Any other comments by the applicants or the public?
Let's see, we've got Mr. Cosgrove and we've got Mr. Vaughn. So I can't remember who came first. I think I picked you, Jamie, first the last time, so I'll go with Mr. Vaughn, I guess.
All right, thank you. I agree with what's being said about the safety of the neighborhood. Also has to be something that's been brought up over the years, over the past couple months, of the increased traffic flow on Todd's Hill, Parish Farms Road. We have put in a petition to the Traffic Commission to put in stop signs that may slow traffic a little bit. But if you develop these houses, and hopefully families will be moving in, and for the children to be riding their bikes out on Todd's Hill Road is taking their lives in their own hands. I was fortunate to make it up here. Slower. We also had the back roads between O'Brien, which was a nice play area for them. That just adds to the neighborhood. That adds the attractiveness of the development and the people. That's why I don't understand why they don't try to put in some type of road or some access. Again, to get the public access into the property behind would be a beautiful thing. That would be something that would really add to the whole project. Thank you.
I think, thank you. Further public comment.
Jamie?
Yeah, Jamie Cosgrove, just to provide some background, Chuck, with the discussion that was happening earlier regarding. Now, I did have a informal discussion with representatives from Land Trust. However, I can't speak for the Land Trust. I don't know if they ever took a formal vote. However, I was presented with a concept plan which showed the meadow areas, being reestablished, as well as the wood areas. However, and I believe some discussions took place with some various commissions, town commissions, the Conservation Commission, and maybe the Community Forest Commission, regarding some stewardship plans and efforts for those. So there was a discussion. However, I don't know if it ever formally was able, to come forward. And I believe there was, at that point in time, it was determined that the applicant had engaged RWA with discussions. I think it is clear that, the applicant, and I'm pleased to hear, which confirms with my discussions with the applicants directly, is that I believe they're open to seeing it be public access. I think at the end of the day, an entity that will take it and provide public access, I don't think there's any objection to that from my discussions. And again, I just ask, as a planning commission, we make decisions based on, what's in the best interest of the community at times. And, I've heard, and I think having public access and passive recreation to our open space is something that's been largely supported and seen as an asset through the town of Branford. So, I don't know if you're planning on taking a vote tonight, but I'll just say that the town will continue to engage both the applicant and RWA and other interested parties in identifying a plan or opportunity or ownership where it does keep that passive recreation opportunity open to the citizens of Branford. Thank you.
Chuck, I understand. Thank you. It looks like Mr. Damo has further comment.
Yeah, just once again, thank you, Claire Damo here, in support of my sidewalks, which to me every day it's more and more important. I don't know if it's possible for Mr. Vigliotti's organization to somehow give a portion of the land prior to the water company. That could be, in a sense, you know, that trail that we have down by Short Beach that connects the railroad down to Stony Creek. Could like a trailway be a portion that could go, Mr. Cosgrove, you said it connects to Parish Farm. Is there some way that we can encircle, as I mentioned before, this new estate from Avon and Cherry Hill, where that intersects, or where the two houses are? I think you said over by, it was like that off-road access behind the Cosgrove property. Does that go over to Parish Farm, or can it go directly to Parish Farm to almost be a trailway for this public passive enjoyment? I don't have the map, so I'm having trouble seeing it. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, down where
I just put it up. Are you talking about something along lines from in here somewhere?
Yes, I think so. And that trail that you actually have there, is that where the property ends?
The property ends right here at Cherry Hill. So behind it is, again, that's the Regional Water Authority, it's my understanding.
Right.
Which was a successor in interest in New Haven Water Company.
So which is the property that Mr. Vigliotti is talking about giving to the water company? Behind this line, the solid broken line?
I'm going to circle it with my cursor if you can see that. Again, Harry Smith Town Planner, starting at this point on Cherry Hill Road, a little bit of frontage there, down here. So all of this, then going down, I'm scroll my cursor down, picking up all of this property. So all of this area, following along the property line here. Again, this portion of it is actually going to have frontage on Todd's Hill Road, and then back up following the back property lines of these proposed lots. There'll be another piece that has frontage on Parish Farm Road. There's a very steep slope there, as Mr. Freddy indicated. And then it's going to follow behind some of these existing frontage lots on Parish Farm Road as you go up the hill.
Right.
Finally, it circles back around to the north of the existing pond. And there's a lot of wetlands around the pond as well.
So is some kind of a trailway that follows that line, that last line that you went from Parish Farm all the way back to Cherry Hill? Is that conceivable to turn into a trailway that could belong to either the town or the land trust?
You know, I'm going to defer again, Harry Smith Town Planner, to someone who knows the property better than I. There are fingers of wetlands through here. So, for example, this area where there isn't a lot proposed that fronts on Todd's Hill Road, there's an area of wetlands here. Now, how really saturated these areas are, I don't know, but there's a large wetland, at least indicated on the map, to the east of the existing pond. Could you get a path through here somehow? You know, possibly, but again, I'm not familiar enough with the property to say.
I see. Well, I thank you for your consideration. Again, the increasing transportation and families, the beautiful was it the Cornwall Estates? More children there. Again, I talked about safety, and I was glad someone did bring the idea of the stop signs to the I guess it was the traffic department. Just thank you for your consideration. I just would like to see, agreeing with another public speaker, that we do it right, that we make it nice, because it's becoming a nicer area, and there's a lot of walkers, a lot of runners. I walk and I have to worry about safety all the time. Thank you.
Chucky Anders here. Marcy, did you have a comment or question?
Well, yeah, I was just going to offer a point of information. There's a property for sale down at the end of Cherry Hill, and that I'm not sure if how close it abuts, I think it's Lake Salt and Stall Road, but I would be curious if there's a potential, larger planning opportunity to connect either Cherry Hill Road through to Autumn Hill with a paper street through that property that's for sale, or to connect into the Salt and Stall path. And, again, I'm not sure we're the right entities to take ownership and steward it, but, as I've said previously, I think it all needs to be, planned for and drawn out on a plan that makes sense, for the town purposes.
Thank you, Marcy. I don't know if anyone knows what the status is with the vacant land and the connectivity and how that affects with the existing water company land up there. But it's a good question.
Mr. Chairman, this is Tim Lee again. In this, listening to the conversation that the commission has had and some of the neighbors have had, Harry had mentioned that one of the entities that is eligible to take the open space is the town of Branford. So this may be a better question addressed to Harry or even the first selectman. Is this open space something that the town of Branford is interested in having? And we could designate them as the entity to take the open space.
Chucky and Chair Harry, does he have any inclination? I mean, that's a board of selectmen and town meeting.
Harry Smith, town planner, I think
RTM
it's
meeting.
referred to the first selectman or possibly other folks. I don't know if the applicants if any discussions have occurred along that line or not.
Yeah, well, I could speak to that. Jamie Cosgrove, first selectman. And correct, it would have to be ultimately there's other bodies that would have to ultimately approve that. Now, when this application was prior to first coming forward, or when it initially did, I did have a discussion where, and as I mentioned, the property that is being transferred over as open space, or as a conservation easement on, is all wetlands. Pretty much there's very little, if anything, that for any recreational use other than passive recreation. From that, we started looking at it in terms of, so yes, there is the potential for passive recreation, but also I think a greater environmental benefit with proper stewardship. And that's when I had discussions, and heard of interest from land trust members, in particular Bill Horn and a few others, had began to develop a concept plan for a stewardship program for the property. And I felt at that time that, the land, that's what they do. That's their mission. And certainly the town would be supportive. And that's where I said the discussions did take place with certain town commissions that are involved in that area, and was thinking, okay, that's the direction it's going to go in. And then as the application was going through, learned of the fact that it was going to be RWA was going to be offered the property, which I did hear that they would initially I heard that they were considering it. I hadn't heard anything, and the question came up, well, would the RWA then consider some type of agreement where it's public access under the a program. I think they have a program that's centered around the educational benefit, environmental education, watershed education, and we have not. And again, I know with everything right now, it's pretty difficult to kind of engage in any formal talks with. We've reached out to them on some other issues, but that's where, again, I just thought it was important tonight to state that I feel it's important that that should be considered the public access point. So that kind of answers the questions why the town didn't initially move forward. We just assumed, or my position was that, the land trust would be the applicant to receive it, and we would be more in a supportive role.
Chucky and Chair, thank you, Mr. Cosgrove. I mean, I'm certainly aware that the water company has public access there are many trails now around Lake Saltonstall. It's open for fishing. There's different colored trails. I've gone there quite a bit and done the circuit. It's beautiful, and they do a very good job. That said, there's a charge. I mean, you got to get a water company permit. It gets you on the properties, but it's a, you know, I don't know if they would consider that part of this. I mean, my contemplation is that you wouldn't need a water company permit to get on this type of piece, but I don't know.
Well, sorry, where's my hand? Can I speak? I was trying to raise my hand. Jamie Cosgrove again. You know, just getting back to the whole stewardship thing, where I think there's an opportunity with this property to do something, keep it something, you know, special for the community and continue to add value to it. And that's where I don't know if the regional water will take that same initiative. You know, they have a property that they took ownership that abuts this property to the north. And, you know, they have a couple of years mowed down the meadows, but there's other meadows. I noticed that it's just being overrun by the invasives, you know, the autumn olive, and it's going to get to a point where, you know, so when you speak of the trail systems, which are, by permit only, I don't know if the same, if they have the resources or if it's in their mission to, you know, take on what that concept plan of kind of preserving what was there, but also being steward and long-term stewards of the property.
Chuck Anders here. Well, Mr. Cosgrove, you said earlier that, well, our own Branford Land Trust, that's what they do. I mean, they do try to, again, you mentioned passive recreation, so we're not talking playgrounds or anything. We're just talking about walking trails. That's the extent of it because of the wetlands. Right. So I mean, would you? But it sounded like you wouldn't have any problem if the land trusts were willing to take this over, subject to a condition. But I don't know if the applicant is willing to agree with that. I don't know.
I didn't hear that from the applicant. I think they were indifferent in who takes it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't want to speak for them.
Tim Lee on behalf of the applicant. I can speak on behalf of the applicant. The applicant is indifferent as to who gets the open space. We have identified as part of this application the RWA, and that's the entity we're proposing to take the open space. Once again, we're the contract purchaser, and we're subject to certain contractual limitations. So we're not the only party to this particular application, and and we're limited. We're limited in who we can offer the open space to.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Well. So what do we have? Anything else? What if we had as a condition that it be either the Water Authority or the Branford Land Trust? Because Harry mentioned that we could mention more than one entity.
I think you can certainly do that.
Okay. Okay, well, it's just something to talk about. What I'm trying to do is get everything on the table before we go into deliberation. So before we close the public hearing, does any other member of the public, the applicant, the commission members, or the public have any further comments? Okay, hearing none, then I think we can close these matters as a public hearing. Again, looking at our agenda, these were matters, what, 2 through 8 or something? I didn't have my agenda from.
2 through 8. That's correct. Harry Smith, Town Planner.
Okay, so then we'll close items number 2 through 8 on the this public hearing, and we may talk about this later tonight. We'll see how we do here. So that then brings us then to item number 9, which is Joseph C. Schiffer. Mr. Schiffer. 1923 Buena Vista Road. This is the coastal site plan and special exception for grading associated with a new septic and demolition of 2 houses and construction of a new house within 100 feet of inland wetlands. And is the applicant here on this one?
Jim Freddy, Criscolo Engineering. I'm here. Joe Schiffer is also here.
Yes.
I'm representing Mr. Schiffer. This property on Buena Vista is actually a combination of two properties. There was if you look, you can put up the survey that was submitted. There was a building on the west side that was known as the Glove Factory. And then on the east side,
Mr. Schiffer, I've made you a co-host. If you share your screen, if you have that in front of you, everyone should be able to see it.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so this is, let me just get the image up that would explain it to begin with. Jim, I'm putting up the aerial.
Okay.
So the property, I think you can see it's outlined in red.
I don't think you're quite up yet.
I'm sorry?
I don't think you're quite up there yet.
It's on my screen.
Is there, sometimes at the bottom of the window is a little share button that should...
I hit the share button.
Okay. And you are a co-host, so let me double check on that. Yep, you're a co-host, so it should work the way it did this afternoon. Let me try this.
All right, let me try again. I'm going to hit share.
You have to highlight the window and then the share.
All right, highlight the window, which I did.
I'll try and find it.
All right, here. No?
Not yet.
All right.
Caitlin Piazza, Assistant Town Planner. Harry, you might need to allow multiple participants to share.
I think I did it as a co-host, so as a co-host, I think he can shares, but I don't.
I hit the share at the bottom of the toolbar for Zoom, right?
There's the green button with the up arrow. And
right.
That should bring up another window with all the windows. If you have one window,
I have, well,
there,
right.
and you click on that, and then there's a share button within the window. There, you got it.
Got it. Yep. Okay. I saw that. Yeah.
Great.
All right. So, Jim, do you want to continue?
Sure. Jim Freddy, Criscolo Engineering. That property outlined in red is actually a combination of two properties. Again, there was a residence on the right, and on the left there was a building that was known as a glove factory. Go to the next page, Joe.
Okay, the next page is I just have a hold on. This is just a street view. So we're on Buena Vista. Yeah, so the top image is looking to the east, and to the right is the existing building. It's the Opie residence. By the way, I didn't introduce myself, I guess. I'm Joe Schiffer at 52 Riverview Avenue in Short Beach. And that is 15 Buena Vista Road. These photos were taken before, this is 23, was demolished. And then past 23, you can see this is the Johnson property. It's 27 Buena Vista Road. So the site is now from the property line of 27 to the property line of 15. And you can see it the other direction. This is now looking west. All right. And all right, so shall I go to the site plan, Jim?
Please.
Okay, let me get there. I think I've got it here. Yeah.
Perfect. So Jim Freddy, Priscola Engineering. So what you're looking at is the site plan that we've prepared. What you can see here is that the two properties have been combined. And a triangular area to the northwest of the property has actually been conveyed to the neighbor, John Opie. It's about 444 square feet, I believe. As basically straightening out an existing condition there that provides Opie better access to his property. What's on this drawing here, you can see right next to where this pointer is a single car garage. It's a little deeper than normal, so there's a shed incorporated in the garage structure in the back. The other structure shown on the lot is the house that Mr. Schiffer is hoping to build here. The other main component of this lot is the septic system shown right there, which we've actually already gotten reviewed and approved by East Shore. In between, or just above that, I should say, is a short landscape retaining wall with some fill up to a flat area between the buildings. It'll provide some sort of a yard there, right in between the two buildings. We're here because the back of the property, or south on this drawing, off the page is a marsh area, and the survey by others have shown basically kind of the edge of the marsh on that property, right down in there. So we are certainly within 100 feet of that marsh area, tidal wetland area. What we also show on here typical erosion controls, the construction entrance, silt fence, bulk standards for the lot. We comply. We don't need any variances for any reason here. Again, it's a single family house being constructed on what was 2 lots, so we're actually decreasing the density, and we're partly there. Like I said, we've gotten approval from East Shore already, which is a challenge in Stony Creek always. We have received comments from Harry and from the consultant. Just one notable thing that before we really get into that is that there was a comment about the garage being more forward toward the road than the house. Discussions with Mr. Schiffer, we are going to make the garage slightly smaller and move it back a little so that the front of the garage will be even with the overhang on the front of the house over the stairs there that he's indicating. So that's just, I bring that up because that's more of a visual thing right now while the plan's still on the screen. At this point, I think Joe, maybe it might be wise to just kind of show him what the house is going to look like.
Yeah, let me just see if I can find the other, where did that go? I had one other plan that I thought I had here. But I guess it's gone away. All right. All right. So I'll jump to the best image. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Sorry. Yeah, let me get that up. So this is just for a little clarification. It was a little more difficult to see the black and white, so I just did a rough colored version, so you can get a feeling for those new structures. So there's the garage and shed. There's that front porch. We're talking about aligning those so that the front of this and the front of the front porch line up. There is a covered porch on the first level. This is a 2-story wing, and this is a 1-story wing. The building that was there and was demolished actually extended to this red line. So we are pushing it back a little bit, which gives our neighbor a little bit better sight line to the harbor. And there's the slope And primarily the fill has to do with creating this level area so that we can have a nice garden over here. So those are some of the basic ideas of the design. And I think I can go to an image now that, see if I get the right one here. Oops, hard to see. I think this is probably the best one to start with. Yeah, so sorry, these are rough drawings, but it's sort of in process now, ironing out the designs. So this drawing, which is somewhat tilted, but it's going to be level, is the facing the road, Buena Vista Road. There's the structure, which is the garage. There's a porch. There's the two-story wing, and then we're working on this. This was an idea. We've discussed it with the Stony Creek Architectural Review Board, and we're working on something different here. But it's a fence of some kind, which is combined with planting to give us a little bit more privacy for the garden area. So this is the north elevation, and then this is the west elevation. So now we're looking at this house. The marsh is to the right, the street is to the left here. And you can see in red, it's a rough outline of the fill that will be brought in, which is the other reason this is a special exception. And so we create a nice working area for a yard and a slope and stepping down to the septic field, which is over here. And you see the two-story and the one-story, and then of course there's a basement under this whole shape. And then there's one other one, I guess. Let me just see if I can find it here. I think is it this one? Sorry. This is the plan. Just for information, there's a living room is the one-story wing, a dining kitchen area facing out into the garden area, main entry in the center here, stairwell to the second floor into the basement, and a kind of a den study downstairs with some storage. And there's the shed area, and there's the garage. And as I said, we're going to pull that back about 4 or 5 feet to line up with the front of the overhang. And then the last image, I think, is this one. I think I've got this. Yeah, so this is the view. The top view is as if you're looking at it from the marsh. So you see the combination of the main structure and the living room area, the porch, and this garden area. And then this is looking from the east, this is showing the underlying slope that's kind of there that was there. And I think that's everything we need to say, perhaps, to share where we are. We're very eager to get under construction. We've been working with Bill Murray, who's a neighbor in Stony Creek, and we're hoping to get going as soon as possible. Given everything that's going on, of course, it's tricky.
Chuck Anders here. Thank you, Mr. Schiffer. Anything else from the applicant?
Jim Preddy, Criswell Engineering. I believe Harry's got some comments and recommendations, and we could kind of address those as we go along, if that's easier, or after he reads them, if you'd like.
Okay, why don't we, I'll Chuck Anders chair. Harry, why don't you review the staff report and we can review the items with the applicant as they come up.
Okay, Harry Smith, Town Planner. I can just walk through these and possibly put them on a shared screen if you'd like, but for now I'll just go through them. You should have received 2 staff reports, one from consulting planner Michael D'Amato, which I'll go through first, and the second was from myself. So going to Mr. D'Amato's staff report. On the first section there, he talks about the accessory structures that was already discussed by Mr. Schiff or Mr. Freddy. So I think that could be addressed through a condition. And then the landscaping plan, frankly, there really aren't, even though it is a requirement in the site plan, there are no specific requirements of landscaping section that need to be addressed by this application, since the actual use is not a special exception use, which is when some of the landscape requirements would come into play in a residential district. The third comment about the driveway apron, it is 10 feet back from the pavement edge, and the reference should be to section 612C8. So it's not the street line or the right of way, it's actually the pavement. Moving on to the second page of the comments, he is noting that there's a sidewalk requirement when, I'll get to that a little more when I get to my memo, but basically notes it could be a high pedestrian, high traffic area, but also there's a sidewalk that already exists, as you probably saw in the Google document, that runs from the middle of this property all the way down to Thimble Islands Road, and the sidewalk along Thimble Islands Road back up to the main area of Stony Creek with the library and the post office and so forth. So the request would be to continue the sidewalk along the entire frontage of this property. He also notes that all the information required from the soil and erosion control plan is not on the plan submitted, so I think some of the missing elements could be added. And he makes several comments. The first being the triangular area that was referred to by Mr. Freddy that would be deeded to Mr. Opie, the adjoining property owner. My understanding is that's been done through a document that was submitted by Mr. Freddy to myself. Another comment would have to do with extending the silt fencing entirely along the property lines all the way to the street line of Buena Vista, just to prevent any possible erosion and sedimentation going on to neighboring properties. Mr. D'Amato also notes that the existing conditions plan shows multiple locations of ledge, which are not necessarily indicated in the proposed plan. It's unclear whether they would need to be completely or partially removed in order to install the septic area. So if they are, some removal is necessary. The method of removal should be specified. I think that's something that could be addressed in a condition as well. He also notes the location direction of the roof leaders in terms of the drainage should be specified to ensure that appropriate sheet flow runoff will be achieved, particularly in the northeast corner of the building. Moving on to my memo that I sent to the applicant yesterday and sent off to the commissioners yesterday, and also posted on the Dropbox account that is linked from the town's webpage yesterday, 24 hours before the meeting as required. Additional comments I'd noted was that, as been alluded to, this is in the Stony Creek Village District, so there was a review by the Stony Creek Architectural Review Board on March 4th. They recommended approval of the application with 4 modifications. The first being that the applicant would come back to a future meeting of the Stony Creek Architectural Review Board and present the final selection of materials for the windows, the roof, exterior walls, as well as the proposed fence. The second was that the fence option showing a pergola along the top was the preferred option they would hope would be used. And I might stop there. I understand that may not be the case anymore. Maybe I'll defer to you, Mr. Schiffer, if you want to comment on that.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we think that that's going to be too busy and unnecessary, and we'll come up with another design. And we also are trying to work with the design of a fence and designing the landscaping together, which will achieve, I think, the kind of aspirations of the review board that was discussed that evening.
Okay. Their third comment was that the side porch would be constructed with a low slope. And the last being that the screening for utilities such as the exterior HVAC units would be provided. They also said they were extremely happy with the proposed design and wanted to make sure I mentioned that to the full commission. Let's see, I would just pick up one more comment on sidewalks. I took a look in the plan of conservation development. This is a priority 2 sidewalk area. So that is something that the commission is required to refer to, and that's noted in the zoning regulations as a consideration this commission should make when it's considering implementation or requirement for sidewalks. Also, I understand there's a trailhead at the end of Buena Vista that is at least an informal trail, if not a formal trail, owned by the land trust that extends out into land trust property and other property to the east. In terms of the coastal site plan, I think with the addition of a complete soil and erosion control plan and maintenance of the measures proposed on it, as well as retaining a vegetated buffer area between the edge of the tidal wetland. I suggested in my comments that we look at possibly the area to the south of the silt fence line. I understand there's sort of a natural break on the property now where the lawn ends and the grading gets a little rougher. That is at least 20 feet back from the edge of the tidal wetland. I think maintaining that existing area is probably adequate. It is a requirement of the coastal site plan the commission consider implementing a vegetated buffer from any critical coastal resource. I also think the special exception criteria are adequately addressed, assuming the commission adopts the proposed conditions. I did suggest 2 findings and 5 conditions, which I can go through now, or I can wait till after the close of the public hearing. Mr. Andrews, how you would like me to proceed?
Well, has the applicant reviewed the staff report, and do you have any objection to the conditions?
Jim Freddy, Chris Cole Engineering, we have reviewed these. There's a couple of items that I guess for clarification, when they talk about an erosion control plan, we have included erosion controls on this plan, and our sheet 2 does have all kinds of narrative. If we added, and it does say in the regulations that the erosion control items can be included on other documents. So I'm thinking that if we can extend the silt fence as requested and add the vegetated buffer along the south end of the property, as Harry suggested, that we probably meet that requirement without creating a whole new set of plans. That's one. The issue, the comment about gutter directions, as was common quite a bit in Stony Creek, Mr. Schiffer was planning on not having gutters at all on the building, but I guess if the commission feels it's necessary, we could deal with directing them in the front of the house toward the road and not toward the neighbor. But just, again, the design was to not have gutters. The vegetated buffer, it says prepared by an environmental professional. As a professional engineer, if we get a little direction on the plants themselves, hopefully we can just again include them on this plan, rather than having to reach out for someone else to create a plan. Everything else I think is we'll deal with the driveway apron being 10 feet. We already talked about the garage. I guess if the commission feels the sidewalk is necessary to complete to the edge of the property, that can be easily accomplished. And then the other items were the Stony Creek Review Board, which Mr. Schiffer will address when he gets there.
Okay, Chucky under chair. Mr. Schiffer, you're okay with going back to the Stony Creek Review Board and having them look at it, or what?
Yes, Joe Schiffer speaking here. Yes, that was understood, and we all agreed to it at the meeting. We would take this to this commission meeting, and we would then make some small modifications that everyone is satisfied with as needed to the final drawings for the building permit.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chucky and Chair. Harry, do you have any thoughts regarding the comments by Mr. Freddy on the conditions, or what are your thoughts?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. Mr. Schiffer, if you release the shared screen, I can put up the staff memo I had so I can sort of explain the proposed conditions. At least everyone could see them in writing.
Sure, I'm going to hit stop share.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Everybody should be able to see the memo I sent to the commission dated April 15th. I'm just going to scroll down to the conditions. 2 typical findings. This is commission finds proposed use is consistent with special exception criteria and the typical coastal site plan finding. And typical condition about construction work limited to that shown on the plans, unless it's further modified. Soil and erosion control measures prior to any start of construction, satisfaction of the zoning officer. And then number 3 would be a number of things that need to be addressed before the issuance of a building permit. A is extending the silt fence. Excuse me, A is the vegetative buffer from the south from the silt fence line, which we could adjust to say, to comply with section 5.1.d.6, after the comma, at least a 20-foot wide portion of the area to the south of the line of silt fencing, extending as it's read, as it's written already. Going down to D.
Harry, just Chucky Anders chair. Ms. Freddy said, do we typically he said, can you give me some guidance about? Or
I think Mr. Freddy could be considered an appropriate environmental professional. That's wording right out of the regulations. So
okay,
I don't think I think he'd be perfectly appropriate in terms of adding things to the plan. In terms of what he said about adding using the existing plan sheets, I think that would work fine as well. So I don't think an additional sheet is necessary.
Okay.
Joe Schiffer here. Just one other comment, Harry. Just so I think those who perhaps don't know this site, I think many people do, but there's a very large seeded area, a very wide lawn in effect, that runs right up to the marsh. So it's all natural. It all absorbs and drains. So in a way, the vegetated buffer is in place with all of that lawn area, which is maintained by all the houses that face that marsh.
Yeah, that's sort of the issue. A real vegetated buffer would be a series of plantings that aren't mowed, that would consist of plants that would have some kind of ability to take up nutrients, phosphorus, nitrogen, and actually filter the runoff from the lawn in a more effective way. So it's basically giving up 20 feet of the lawn along the edge of the tidal wetland. And I know a lot of folks have lawns right down to the edge. And the tidal wetland, I think, is really, I believe that's state property. That's the borderline of it.
Okay.
So I think in several circumstances, the commission has required some kind of vegetated buffer. There's no real hard and fast number in terms of the width of it. But it is something that's mentioned in the coastal site plan requirements and the guidance we have from the state coastal management.
Harry, Jim Freddy, Criscola Engineering. I'm thinking, you know, obviously, if you're acceptable after, you know, reviewing it, I'm thinking some sort of strip of salt tolerant ornamental grasses, so that we don't encourage anything too tall or woody to grow in there as to block anyone's view of anything. But I hear what you're saying, the lawn is not enough, and so we could do something a little heavier than that.
I think that kind of thing would work well, and we've probably got some plant species from other plans we can go over with you, but I think that would be fine. Going down to D.
Can I interrupt on that?
Sure.
I would just, yeah, Marcy Paluzzi here. I don't think it's critical to specify the specific plants. I think you could cover that note by just saying native, salt tolerant, low growing species, of a certain distance to promote the, the vegetation. But I would also add in there to, give them the rights to remove any invasives that may come in from time to time so that it's a maintained area.
Yeah, I think without changing the wording, maybe in the condition, that could be understood and possibly added to the wording on the plan so that.
Correct.
And, that's perfectly acceptable to me. I think that makes perfect sense.
Thank you.
So D right now is worded, if that's accepted the applicant, I'll just leave that there. The group leaders. G, we should change the wording so it's 10 feet back from the edge of pavement of the road.
He hasn't scrolled down.
You skipped a little bit, Harry.
I did. What do you have a concern about?
Jim Freddy, Criscola Engineering. Just to be clear about the blasting, there isn't any blasting proposed. Basically, we can't remove rock for the installation of the septic system. We did do test pits there. We think we can get it in. If we encounter some rock, we'll have to raise the system up a little bit. But as far as constructing the house, there may be a couple of instances where a hydraulic hammer may be needed minimally just to level some areas out for footings, but otherwise they're planning on building right onto the rock. So we're not anticipating any blasting.
Okay. I mean, do you have a problem with the wording at this point?
No.
Okay.
No, I was just clarifying.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. So we're down to H. That was already discussed and agreed to. J, we could reword or eliminate. I mean, the modifications suggested by the Stony Creek Architecture Review Board are recommendations, and the commission can consider them as it wishes. Considering the applicant does not wish to do that feature, I mean, there's no requirement for that. That was just, there were several options, I think, discussed with the Stony Creek Architecture Review Board, and there was a preference indicated for having a pergola option. So that's not on the table anymore. This is a single family house, and frankly, it would not in and of itself have come before the Stony Creek Architecture Review Board in the first place. It's just because of the special exception requirement. So that brings me to the end of the staff report, and I don't think I have anything else to add at this point.
Do we need to add, or is it already in here and I missed it, moving the garage so that the front of the garage aligns with the front porch, or is that already in here somewhere?
I did not make that specific, but I think I will, for the record, say as staff, I accept Mr. Schiffer's proposal that the maximum extent of the porch would be the extent and be the line to which the garage would need to be brought back to. So the maximum extent of the porch and the front of the garage would need to line up, and that would satisfy the requirement of the regulation, in my opinion.
Okay, do we need to say that in the regs because it's a plan modification or what?
I don't think we need to say it. It's in the record. I mean, I think,
okay.
I think that would comply with that condition if the commission agrees with me and Mr. Schiffer.
Okay, well, the applicant has said they're going to do that. Is that correct for the record?
Joe Schiffer, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Any questions from commission members? Then let's open it up to the public. Does any questions or comments from the public? One more time, is there any comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, then I think we can close this matter as a public hearing. I'll just ask,
Thank
does
you.
the applicant have any further comments?
Jim Freddy, Criscola Engineering. I do not. I don't know if Mr. Schiffer does.
No, I do not. Thank you for your attention to this, and we appreciate it.
Great. Okay, thank you. Then we'll close this matter as a public hearing. That concludes our public hearings for this evening. So going through the rest of our agenda here, starting with the minutes. I think we were circulating minutes from our April 2 meeting. And I understand, Harry, you wanted to review this a little bit further. Is that correct?
Again, Harry Smith, Town Planner. Yes, just want to take a quick look in terms of some of the references to the remote meetings and how that was done. So I can bring that to the next meeting.
Okay, so we'll just table the minutes. That was our first remote meeting, so. Right. Brings us to correspondence. Do we have any correspondence?
Mr. Chairman, Harry Smith, Town Planner. I'm not aware of any.
Okay, great. Okay, then let's bring up for discussion then at least the public hearing items. Items number 2 through 8. That's the Vigliotti subdivision in the special exceptions for the common driveways interior lots. So again, we brought up, it sounds like there's 3 issues here. One is the issue of, are we okay with the interior lots at all, or do we don't like that special exception and would prefer that they go back and do another plan that has a town road that has less interior lots? That's sort of issue number 1. And the other 2 issues that were sort of came up and we had discussion about was sidewalks. Do we want sidewalks at all? And if so, where and for what location? And then the third issue was, what about the open space in terms of the entity that gets it, and then the condition that public access be allowed to the open space. So those are the 3 general issues that I understood. Harry, just so we're clear, who's voting on this? We should probably limit it to people who are voting. Discussion.
Yeah, again, Harry Smith, Town Planner. I believe there were a couple of absences during the course of the public hearings. And I think we cleared that up before the deliberations, but let me just go over it again to make sure. So just to review, the public hearing opened on January 9th. I understand that on the second meeting in January, which I think was the 23rd, there was no real discussion about this. It was just continued without any further testimony to the commission's meeting on the 6th of February. And at that point, the public hearing, the original public hearing was closed. So in looking at we had a grid of who was there at these meetings on the 9th. I think everyone, all the regular members were there. On the 23rd, Joe Vayuso and I think Marcy, both of you were not there. However, there was no discussion, so I don't think that really matters. And on the 6th, I think John Lust was not there. I seem to recall, John, that you said for the record that you would listen to the recording on the meeting on the 6th.
Yeah, Harry, can you unmute commission members?
Oh, I'm sorry. Some of them are muting themselves, but I'll try to make sure everyone's unmuted.
Just for the record, I listened to the tape for the meeting I missed.
Okay, great. Well, I think everyone was set. I think we're talking about just the 5 regular members who all listened to or been in attendance at all the portions of the public hearing, including the reopened hearing tonight.
Okay, so then it's John, Joe Chadwick, Joe Vayuso, Marcy, and myself. Sounds like. Okay, then let's have a discussion then among commission members. Again, those are the 3 issues that I saw. I'm happy to weigh in, give my general thoughts, but someone else want to talk first?
John Lusk, Commissioner. I'll start it off. I would have preferred a road, but I don't want to trade off an impact to the wetlands and a loss of open space. So I guess as a result, I'm fine with the rear lots. I certainly agree with the need for sidewalks, especially in the area of the intersection. I think we've got to be realistic as to what's possible, physically, structurally. And on the open space, I like the idea of listing an either or now, being RWA of the land trust, and find some way of working out which would be the best steward for the property.
Okay, thank you, John. Marcy?
I, having not been able to see the alternate plans, and knowing that those lots could be smaller on the road, I'm really not convinced the impacts are that substantial. And it's, I would like to have seen that map. So I'm really not convinced to change my stance on the special exception for those rear lots. I am a little bit more understanding of the length of the sidewalk. I think if they were to do a short stub of a road and put the sidewalk, there to connect into a potential use in the conservation area, there might be a proposal that could, maybe not do some of the sidewalk on Cherry Hill and just have it be on the more dangerous corner along Todd's Hill and Parish Farm. I think you can shelf a sidewalk on Parish Farm with a retaining wall if need be. But, I would be, wanting to see sidewalks in areas that are traffic intense. And I would want to see, a small section of road, even if it's just a cul-de-sac for part of the lots, to bring people into the lot, to create a little sense of a neighborhood, and to use that as a vehicle to access the open space. And then potentially whoever stewards the land, create some kind of passive walkway through the system to come out on Cherry Hill, because I think there's long range opportunities to connect walking trails through Cherry Hill and out that way. And I think, we have to start that at some point and really protect our, that jewel of a property. So I would just like to see a better plan drawn, to be honest, before I'm convinced that the rear lots is the way to go.
Okay, thanks, Marcy. Joe Vayuso?
Yeah, well, I'm getting to the sidewalks. I'm not sure. Jim was saying something in the neighborhood of 2,500 feet, possibly, of sidewalks. I'm not sure that we need all 2,500 feet. I would like to take a ride by there and see what it looks like and see where the sidewalks need to be. But if we're going to put sidewalks in, I would like to see them just in the areas where they're going to get some use and needed. I don't necessarily like to put them just to have it surrounding all the property, because there are some areas there that's going to be very difficult to put a sidewalk in, and possibly not necessary because there's not going to be enough use there. So I'm sort of blinded as how it looks. I know there was in front of the old homestead, they widened the road there, and there's not much room between the curb and an existing fence that's there. And I'm not sure how much property is there, but it's not a whole lot. I think that fence would have to be removed or pushed back, which is going to take some intensive work to put a sidewalk. And I'm not sure if that's where the sidewalk should be. So I'm a little confused, not confused, but a little bit not understanding where the sidewalk should go if we're intending to want to include that in the application. But I would like to see it only be where they would get enough use.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Joe Chadwick? Joe, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, it took me a while to get the cursor to work.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to Marcy's point, It is kind of disappointing that, well, they talked about it and it was kind of a lot of trouble, so we're not going to do it. I kind of get that. I kind of don't get that, but it's a little difficult to accept. On the standpoint of sidewalks, I really do believe they're important. I don't think we have a mechanism to place them. And I think the grade restrictions are not really restrictions. I think that can be worked around. I'm not sure how the mechanism works with having alternative potential holders for the open space, but I think that can also be worked around.
Okay. Okay. Where I'm kind of leaning on this is on the issue of the road. I don't think it's that necessary here. I think the main benefit of the road of a road here would be for the houses in the subdivision, not so much the people that don't live in the subdivision. And one of the reasons you oppose, I think, the opposition to interior lots is by the neighbors who, bought next to it, and all of a sudden, a second house shows up because someone wants to put in an interior lot. In this case, there are no neighbors. The people that are affected by this are the land itself. If you remember the original public hearing, no one got up. I didn't hear any opposition to the interior lots per se, from people that would be affected by it. Oh, now and that's the example where we actually turned down an interior lot under special exception once because, there's neighborhood opposition to it. And there was concern, what I remember the original neighbors, they were concerned about the stop sign, the lack of stop sign being there. There was concern about the open space. But I don't recall an objection per se to having interior lots because it's going to, disturb my, what I'm used to seeing, what I have there, what my backyard's going to look like, people looking in my house or whatever. So that doesn't, I didn't see that much public objection to that. And then I thought there are some benefits to having it this way. It's actually less density, which is kind of nice. They're bigger lots. It was 18 versus 15, and it's more open space. And then there are potential drainage issues here, which we know there's there's wetlands up there. The soil isn't that permeable, and my recollection is they've had drainage when they just did across the street. So I'm okay with this particular configuration here. Basically, if you buy a lot here, you know what you're buying, versus you're going to have a common driveway and you bought into it. So I don't see that as a particular problem in this case, in the benefits of the increased open space and actually the less density and the less town and the potential drainage issue. You don't have to try to engineer out of this stuff, which you would have to do more if you put it in a road. And so I'm okay with that aspect of it. So the other two issues were the sidewalks and the open space. The sidewalks, I think, it sounds like there is a reason. I think there may be it may be a good idea for part of it. What we heard is that a lot of people walk up there on the streets, and I don't doubt that. Again, when I went up and looked at the site, I was surprised how close it is to the back entrance to the Murphy School too. So, although I don't know if anyone actually goes up there, but again, there is, there's the new subdivision across the street, the cornfield stuff that we just did, and now this is coming in. So there will be more pedestrian activity up there. And I've walked up there, I've ridden my bike up there, I've run up there. So if we want sidewalks, you think where should it be? My sense is that you don't need it all the way down Cherry Hill Road. Frankly, that's still pretty remote. But it would be probably the intersection of Cherry Hill and Todd over to Parish Farm. assuming that there's topographical issues to make it go up Parish Farm, and there's existing houses on there. So that's sort of where my initial inclination is on that. And then on the open space, you know, I like the idea of a condition of approval that will require some passive walkways built in this, that public, you can have open space and not be open to the public. You know, and sometimes maybe that's a good idea. If there's a endangered species or something you don't want, whatever. But the idea here is, yeah, I think we should have a condition that it be open and accessible to the public. And maybe it's either one. Maybe it's the land trust, or so we have to do one or the other. And ideally, it'd be the one who wants it the most, who's willing to do the work, you know, and we'll do it. I don't know how we monitor that, but I mean, there was enough. A lot of the public said things about it, and you know that it's true. I mean, it is an opportunity here. So somehow that's my sense. So maybe we list both of those and include a requirement of public access as part of it. And then if the water company doesn't want to do it, then maybe the land trust will pick it up, or they'll find someone who will. So that's sort of where I'm coming down with those three. So where do we, so as I'm counting numbers, I think we've got, it sounded like John, myself, and Joe Viuzzo were probably in favor of the application. Marcy was probably opposed because you weren't convinced that they had done enough work to show that this is the best alternative. And Joe, I couldn't tell. Joe Chadwick, if you were, you know, leaning that way as well, or not. So unmute. Anyone else wish to comment? Any of the 5 commission members? I know a couple of people are muted right now, but.
Well, I would just remind everybody, Marcy Paluzzi here, that, you know, you talk about doing a street, you know, you could still have 1 acre lots without having to do 1.5 acre lots and do the street. And, you know, that would create a neighborhood on the property, and yet there would still be other parcels that would front Cherry Hill Road or Todd's Hill Road. You know, it's not going to make a complete subdivision, but I think having a small cul-de-sac has a huge benefit of creating a sense of neighborhood for a majority of what's being proposed here, and they're not losing lots to do it, you know. So I don't see the issue, and I only see it as an opportunity to get better access to the space beyond it as a access point to the open space that's safer, to provide parking that's not off of Todd's Hill Road or not off of Parish Farms Road. I mean, you know, you could create a nice little connection through there from the cul-de-sac to Cherry Hill Road. And I do think that there's opportunities to take Cherry Hill Road and connect through to Autumn Ridge or to Lake Salmso. So I think it does potentially tie into a bigger system. And I think it starts with what we can control as far as making a statement in a subdivision, and not, you know, it's not like it's, you know, one lot after another coming in, you know, over time. It's 15 lots going in all at once. So let's pay attention to that and do that the best way we know how.
Yeah, I guess, and that is a fair comment. Again, I think the main benefit would be to the people in the subdivision that are buying it, that I think a road may be better there, and you could probably sell your houses for more as opposed to common driveways, which is what we have here. In terms of having an access from that way, I don't even know. I'm looking, there's a ton of wetlands around there. I think the wetlands, the access that Mr. Cosgrove proposed isn't on wetlands, and you could actually put a car in there. And that seems probably a decent place. You could cross over more towards Autumn Ridge. So that may be a best, I mean, just what do I know? But that seems to be where there aren't wetlands and where you would want to have people, the public, walk into the area. It just seems like, and again, wetlands is driving a lot of this, that it may be more difficult coming in from that other area. So
These, Marcy, please again, these are also wetlands that have been mowed and maintained as meadow wetlands for years. So it's basically off of a soil type of designation, and I think having the right stewardship for the land would be someone coming in and bringing in nature, meadow type mixes that, there might be certain times of the years where you couldn't, walk through there, but you could with the Vanderweed property, you can have a field and have a path that skirts it, and you can, educate, and you want to move a path from a start to a finish in more of a loop somehow, whether it's through the property or a loop through the property. If you come in on Cherry Hill Road, where is the point that you go in and leave from? I mean, you starting and ending at the same point, or are you creating an experience where you can start at one point and loop and come out at another point? But, again, I think that's going to be in the hands of who takes ownership of the property.
Right. Yeah. The other thing that is, again, weighing on me again is I don't see this as inconsistent, violating the special permit criteria. In other words, I think the objection and why we turned down another interior lot is because of the affecting people, an established neighborhood, creating an interior lot that affected established neighborhood. I just don't see this doing that. And my default position in a lot of cases is, you know what, maybe I would have designed it differently, but I think this complies with the regulations enough for me, and I give the applicant its own discretion, to do that. And rather than, particularly, I think there are some benefits to this in terms of less density and more open space and better drainage stuff. So that's not enough for me, even if I get it that a road would be, I'd probably be more likely to buy the house in there if there was a road than having to have a common driveway. But hey, that's their doing.
If I could just bring up a few examples, this is Marcy Paluzzi again. When I think of the other rear lots that are in this neighborhood, you're coming off of Autumn Ridge and Parish Farms in that neighborhood, and there were roads going in there, and it was one incidental rear lot to, help the developer offset the cost of the roads. It wasn't a design that was, predicated on having 5 rear lots in order to get more lots. It's as if they avoided the notion of roads from the get-go and didn't consider it. And I think that's where I have my biggest objection, because when you're bringing in those right-of-ways and the sewer easements in there anyway, those are all the things that go under a road, and they all have to be, planned for as far as rights of access and whatnot. So to me, they're just avoiding the expense of the road to avoid the expense of the road. And I think, having 1 or 2 more lots covers the cost of that, gives you a better overall design where you're on a, most people want to have frontage on a cul-de-sac. That's very, very marketable in the real estate community, to live on a cul-de-sac. So I don't think it's asking too much. I mean, if anything, I would waive the design standards a little bit to, not have to have a 30-foot wide road or something. But, and then if you think off of Leeds Island Road, you have flag lots because the terrain of the land is such that you can't access the properties otherwise. And that gives you the flexibility to minimize grading on the land, where that's not really what's happening here. So, like I said, I would have liked to have seen that plan that shows why doing a cul-de-sac is taking so much wetlands and how much wetlands that's really taking. And, even though we're not in charge of wetlands, it would have been nice to have some narrative on the type of wetlands that are there, because it's not like a woodland inundated wetland all the time. I think it's a wetland that you have various seasons of periodic flooding. So,
Okay, does other people have any comments? Doesn't have to be me and Marcy just talking about this.
I don't know. John Lust, Commissioner. I understand everything Marcy is saying. I don't know how, if he meets the conditions that we require for this approval, I don't know how we send somebody back to the drawing board to redesign a project because we think there's a better way to design it.
Joe Vayuso? I'm sorry.
I agree with what you're saying, Chuck, mostly. I also have agree a little bit with what Marcy's saying too, but I'm still going to side with going with the plan that we have in front of us.
Okay, Joe Chadwick, do you have anything else to comment on?
I've got nothing further to contribute.
Okay. Okay, then I count 3 votes that are probably in favor of the present configuration. And maybe, I don't know, I maybe one more, I don't know. So that means what we're looking at is a resolution of approval with conditions. And then I think what we need, I don't think we're ready to vote tonight because we've talked about some different stuff tonight that aren't in prior resolutions. So what I think, Harry.
Town Planner Harry Smith. I do have the 2 proposed sets of conditions and findings. One for essentially will be reused for every one of the special exception applications for the rear lots, and one for the subdivision itself. And I could put those up again. I believe I went through them about a month ago with you. I did jot down some wording in the subdivision, the set of proposed conditions for the subdivision to address what I heard the consensus of the commission to be, which is the installation of a sidewalk along the frontage of the subdivision between Cherry Hill Road and the Parish Farm Road, as well as adding a requirement that the open space deed provide for public access, and that condition also provide for the selection of an alternative entity approved by the commission in addition to the possible transfer to the water company. So I can go over all of this if you like. If you want to think about it some more, that's fine too, but I just want to make sure.
Well, I'm in favor of, we've had this on our agenda for a long time. So
It's been around for a while.
I know it. So let's go over. Maybe we can vote on it.
All right. Let me
I
put
just didn't think we were ready. I thought new stuff came up this evening that we weren't ready for.
Well, I mean, it did, but I think I can tweak the wording around in the subdivision enough to address it. And that's assuming that at least the majority of the commission seems to find the proposed lot layout with the rear lots acceptable.
Okay.
They would vote to approve. So I think you should deal with the special exception for the rear lots first and approve all of those, because if those aren't approved, then the subdivision really can't be found to be in conformance with the zone code. So let me put up the proposed conditions and findings for the special exception for the rear lots. Okay, so you should be seeing a memo from myself dated February 6th. And this is the update to the revised staff recommendation. The findings, a typical finding number 1, and these were a couple of waivers. There was information requirements in the section on drainage, stormwater drainage, that were not felt necessary by the applicant's engineer, and that was confirmed in an email from the town engineer. So this would waive those requirements. Number 2 would waive the requirements for landscaping, since there is existing natural landscaping that you could find that constitutes excellence in landscaping design. Number 3, would waive the requirement for the preparation of landscaping plans by a licensed landscape architect, considering these were all single-family homes. The conditions would be, number one, fairly typical condition, erosion controls need to be in place prior to start of construction. Number two would be prior to commencement of construction of any common driveway, or the issuance of a zoning permit or building permit for any of the proposed homes. The site plans would need to be revised to provide a site triangle at the intersection of Todd's Hill Road and the driveway. Need to address proper stormwater storage structures, grading revisions to capture roof, driveway, yard drainage. Again, this follows from some of the conditions encountered on the other side of Todd's Hill Road with a cornfield development. C would require the identification of any significant trees, which are trees greater than 12 inches in diameter, and either measures of their protection identified or those trees that are going to be removed identified in the plans. D would require low impact development practices be considered, roof leaders, footing drains, sump pumps, so forth. E would is really redundant, and I apologize for that. So that could just go away because that's covered by C above. Street trees would be required by F. G would address a situation where easements would need to be provided for some of the common driveways, which in a couple of circumstances require an easement either over the land. It just spells out what would be required. So it covers all its situations where an easement runs across adjoining properties, including a property, whether it provides, that common driveway provides access to that lot or not. And then we have evidence of recording of the easements, form of contact, acceptable town council, blah, blah, blah. 3 would typical standard condition requiring ongoing maintenance of the landscaping. 4 would limit lights, usually lights for a single family home are less than 900 lumens. If they were greater, then they would need to comply with full cutoff and the requirement that the light source have a color temperature no greater than 3000 degrees Kelvin. And 5 is the typical condition on dust control. And 6 is a request from the Regional Water Authority, which in addition to being a possible recipient of the open space, also must be consulted for subdivisions and developments that are proposed within its watershed. And then 7 would kind of be a stopgap, saying this special exception approval would become void if the associated subdivision application and map is not recorded in the town of Branford land records.
Okay, so there's nothing additional we need to add to this addressing the, it sounds like all the stuff we're talking about, sidewalks and the public access is part of the subdivision approval. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
So I think we're going to go ahead and adopt this for every one of the 6 special exceptions if you so choose.
Oh, okay. Then go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So you're only waiving landscape requirements for the special exception, not for the subdivision?
Well, they wouldn't come into play with the subdivision. Those lots wouldn't have the landscaping requirement because all they would need is a zoning permit for construction of the homes. So the subdivision,
as I recall, the last time we had some rare lots, we required landscape plans. I mean, I think that's being inconsistent, and we've got, you know, it's a 15 lot subdivision. I've never heard of waiving landscape plans on something like that. I mean,
yeah, it's individual landscaping around the perimeter of the houses, because as and I think the same thing was done on Leeds Island Road. If you recall, there was a similar subdivision, or there were only 3 rear lots, not all these, but and that was all that was proposed in the subdivision. But
right, there was mature trees there, though. I mean, I think.
Well, I mean, there are trees here too. I mean, there would be street trees required along the road frontage, so it would be a requirement of the subdivision.
Okay, which should be, well.
Yeah, I mean, that's just my suggestion, so you can do with it what you want.
Okay. Can we review the subdivision one?
Sure.
I think they go together. I don't want to vote on one before we consider them both, you know.
You should be able to see the February 6th memo, which instead of an update to a revision is a revised update for some reason. So it starts with conditions. Again, number one, sedimentation erosion control measures need to be installed, satisfy ZO. Number two is a number of items that would need to be added to the record subdivision map, including the correct signature block, all the required lot markers, monumentation. C, again, this would require for every lot with a driveway, the 25-foot site triangle. So not just for the ones with rear lots. D, require planting of street trees is required by the regulations, possibly outside of the right-of-way, depending on overhead utility lines, with the development of an easement to the town for the ownership of the tree if it's within the lots, and the obligation of the property owner to not prune or replace the tree. Item E, really could go out, and I apologize for that, because that is really from the actually, let's leave it in there and just remove the wording if this rear lot. So just say if a lot is proposed to be served by a driveway common or not through an easement. I think there might be one situation where there's a single driveway that runs through a lot. I just can't recall. So that would be provisional. So if you took the words, took the word rear out and changed the word this to the, I think it would read all right and just cover that eventuality.
So change this to
this to the. So if the lot, or if a lot, the, it probably should be a.
A lot, okay.
A lot. Item F, I would propose some changes to the wordings, as I mentioned before, which would, right after, it says Regional Water Authority of New London, Connecticut, close parentheses. After that, you could add or alternative entity approved by the commission. And then down here before the word ensuing, ensuring, you could put providing for public access and ensuring its permanent protection. So I think that would cover what I heard the consensus to be about allowing for an alternative entity, as well as the provision for public access. It's not very specific, but so it would be language that would be in the deed. And then you could have, after G, you'd have curbing along Parish Farm Road. That was, I think, street runoff. And then H, a new H, could be the addition of a sidewalk along the frontage of the subdivision between Cherry Hill Road and Parish Farm Road. And then you would have the remaining conditions. Stormwater drainage would be determined at time of final house design, which was the same thing we did at Leeds Island Road. F is, again, for all the lots, instead of just the rear lot, this would be the request of the Regional Water Authority regarding fuel oil storage tanks. 5 would require final erosion and sedimentation plan to be approved by ZEO town planner. Again, right out of the regs, number 6, underground utilities would be required for the houses that are constructed. And number 7, to request the town engineer, all lots would be connected to the town sewer system and approved by the Water Pollution Control Authority, and minimum 15-foot sanitary sewer easements will be provided for all private laterals. And that is it.
Okay. Okay. Then, any questions then, or any additions or things that anyone think we should make to these, assuming we're inclined to vote on these? Okay, then. So, Harry, maybe you can take this off the screen and we can go back to the special exception.
Oh, let me go back. You want to go back to that one, that memo with the conditions, or you just,
Well, do we need it? I have a paper copy in front of me. I don't know if anyone else does because you sent them out.
yeah.
So does any other, yeah, okay, so let's go then back then to the, well, let's to the subdivision. Does, for those inclined to approve these things, we saw what Harry did, that he added the sidewalk provision as a new condition and then added additional language for the open space, mentions regional water authority or other entity approved by the commission. So we have that option if they come up with someone else, and adds the addition providing for public access in there as well as ensuring that it remained permanent open space. Is anything else we need to beef up, you think, or that's okay? Probably okay.
I think it's okay.
Okay. Okay, then. So then let's now go back to the special exception since we need to vote on that first. So then what I think we're looking at is someone want to make a motion, again, grabbing my agenda because we're I lost my agenda. There we go. So then we're looking at, for the agenda, it's items number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are all the special exceptions. So what we would be doing is making a motion to approve each of these applications with the findings and conditions set forth in Harry's February 6th memo, which he just reviewed with us. And I think he struck subsection E from that one. Is that correct, Harry?
That is correct. That was 2E.
Okay. I don't know if we need to make a motion for each application or if we can just indicate that we're doing this, making a motion to approve this for each of the items, or items 2 through 8 for each of the special exception applications.
I don't know legally what, I mean, my personal opinion as town planner Harry Smith, that you could do them in one motion.
Okay. I think the record is pretty clear. That's what we're doing. And so there's not really any confusion. So then, does someone want to make a motion then to approve the special exceptions for each of items 2 through 8 with the findings and the conditions set forth in Harry's February 6th memo that he just reviewed with us, again, removing item number E?
Excuse me, technical point. For the record, it's item 2 through 7.
Oh.
Harry Smith, town planner again.
Sorry. Yeah, that's right. 2 through 7.
John Luss, Commissioner, I'll make that motion, Chuck.
Okay, there's been a motion by John to make, to approve the special exceptions in 2 through 7. Is there a second to that motion?
Joe Vayuso, second.
Joe Vayuso, second. Okay, then what we'll do is we'll just take a roll call to see how we're voting. So we'll just go down the list. All those in favor: John Lust.
John Lust, Commissioner, I vote to approve.
Okay, Joe Chadwick.
Chadwick in the affirmative.
Joe Chadwick, affirmative. Joe Vayuso.
Approve. Joe Vayuso.
Vayuso, approve. Marcy.
Marcy Pelisi, deny.
And then I will vote to approve. So the ayes have it, a 4-to-1 vote. Chucky Anders, chair, vote to approve. Okay, so we've got to approve these special exceptions. And now let's go to agenda item number 8, which is the re-subdivision. And again, this one, we're looking at, again, Harry's February 6th memo, which he just approved, he just reviewed with us. And is there a motion to approve the re-subdivision with the changes mentioned by Harry? And I believe those changes, in accordance with his memo dated February 6, 2020, they just reviewed with us. And I think there was a change deleted this rear lot and put a lot into subsection 2E, you added in F, you added or allow for the entity, the proposed open space going to the Regional Water Authority. Then you added or allow or entity approved, such entity approved by the commission. And then you added also the requirement providing for public access in addition to ensuring that the permanent protection of the open space. And then you added a new subcondition H about additional sidewalks between Cherry Hill and Parish Farm on the frontage of the property. So does someone want to make a motion to approve that, the item number 8, the subdivision, re-subdivision for 99 Todd's Hill Road as we just reviewed?
Joe Vayuso moves to approve.
Motion made, motion to approve by Joe. Is there a second?
John Lewis, Commissioner. I'll second that.
Okay, John seconds. Any further discussion? We'll take another vote for the record. John Lust, how do you vote?
To approve.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick in the affirmative.
Joe Vayuso?
Joe Vayuso approve.
Marcy?
Marcy Palooza, I guess I have to deny because I denied the other one.
Okay, and Chuck Anders, I vote to approve. Okay, so so we're done with that. That then brings us then to the other public hearing item, which is the 1923 Buena Vista Road. And I believe, Harry, you had a staff resolution that reviewed in the public hearing. And do we, do you want to put that on the screen again?
Yeah, give me a second. But yes, I will. Harry Smith, Town Planner. Okay, so you should be able to see staff recommendation. Again, this is a memorandum dated April 15th from myself to the commission. Going back down to findings as written in the memo. Conditions 1, 2, 3, and A would be changed right here after the first comma to add the words at least 20-foot wide portion at least a 20-foot wide portion of the area to the south. So we're adding the words at least a 20-foot wide portion of. And then going down to 3G, change the word street line, strike those and insert edge of pavement of Buena Vista Road. And going down to J, we would eliminate J and re-letter K and L.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thanks, Harry. Any questions for Harry? If not, then does someone want to make a motion to approve the special exception application and CAM site plan with the findings and conditions that Harry just reviewed with us in the memo with the changes that he also mentioned?
So moved, Joe Chadwick.
Motion, Chuck Anders, motion made by Joe Chadwick. Is there a second?
Second, Marcy Palooza.
Second, Chuck Anders, Chair. Second by Marcy. Any further discussion? All in favor? We'll go through the list again. John?
John Lust, approve.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick in the affirmative.
Joe Vayuso?
Joe Vayuso approves.
Marcy?
Marcy Palooza approves.
Chuck Anders, Chair. I also approve. Okay, so the motion passes unanimously, so that's approved. So we've actually voted on stuff, had a public hearing and voted on something remotely. Congratulations. So let's then go now to old business on our agenda. Item number 165, 195 Main Street. This is one at our last hearing we voted to reopen. And again, this may be one where I may end up voting, but this is, Harry, do we have a date when we're going to do this, or what's
I think it would depend, scheduled to have a meeting with, or at least a phone conference with the applicants and their engineer. If we are all in agreement, I suppose, about any needed additional changes to the plans, and those can be done and submitted quickly enough, we could have it on for the 7th. Again, I think if you defer to setting the actual date to myself and the chair, then if that doesn't turn out, we could push it up even further. I think at this point, tabled from the 2nd, so closed on the 6th. I think you should give yourself an extension of time until May 7th, at least, out of the 90 days in the executive order, just to be safe. So I think we're going to be beyond, I think 65 days took us to this meeting, and that's it.
Okay, Chuck Anders, chair, thanks. Harry, you can take the resolution off the screen.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so then for this one, is everyone agree to giving ourselves an extension to May 7th? I'll ask. John, are you okay with that? Granting an extension?
John, let's hear yes, I'm okay with that.
And Joe Chadwick, okay with granting ourselves an extension to the 7th?
Joe Chadwick in the affirmative.
Joe Vayuso?
Yeah, Joe Vayuso, yeah, approve.
Marcy?
Marcy Paluzzi agrees.
And Chuck Anders also agree. Okay, so then we'll give ourselves to the next meeting, grant ourselves that extension, and then we may reopen on 7th. Is that okay that, you know, Harry's got to speak with the guy and he'll check with me, and if that's okay, we'll put it on the 7th. And so you're okay deferring that to Harry and myself? Yes, just you can raise your hand if you're okay with that. Everyone, okay. And for the record, I'll say everyone is affirmative. I can't see Joe Vayuso, but Joe, you're okay, right?
I am okay. Joe Vayuso, okay.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, item number 2, Thimble Islands. This has been on the agenda, the site plan. Harry, what's going on with that?
This has been withdrawn officially, so the application is extinguished. It's been worked out with the applicant, so they are proceeding to get their building permit to install the pizza oven, and they've removed the 7 parking spaces that were a problem with finding the site in conformance with the prior site plan.
Okay, Chuck Anders here, great. So another thing off our agenda, so we're doing a good job.
Yep.
Item number 3, 8 Howd LLC, special exception 2-family house. We need a public hearing for this.
I think you deferred to me and yourself, Mr. Chair. We're probably looking at the 7th.
Okay, so we'll just table this one again. We'll continuing with our, we already authorized Harry and I to do it, so we'll continue with that. And then item number 4, this is Aldi's.
This is Aldi's in the bank. Again, Harry Smith, town planner. The new assistant planner, myself, listened to quite a bit of the inland wetlands water course agency meeting last week, and the application was not approved yet. They're still deliberating, so I would suggest probably the 21st. I don't think there'll be a vote until after the commission's meeting on the 7th of May. I'm not entirely sure of that, but we also need to have the application, we need to get a review done. So I would suggest probably the 21st, or at least delegating to myself and the chair, setting the exact date of the hearing.
Okay, then, is that okay to delegate to Harry and myself setting the exact date for hearing for item number 4? John, is that okay?
Affirmative.
Joe Chadwick, is that okay?
Affirmative.
Joe Vayuso, is that okay?
Joe Vayuso agrees.
Marcy, is that okay?
Marcy Paluzzi agrees.
Okay, and I'm okay with it as well, Chuck Anders chair. Okay, so then we'll still in wetlands, but we'll figure out something when it's a good time. That brings us then to new business. Any new business, Harry?
Again, Harry Smith, Town Planner. No, there is not.
Okay, how about planner's report?
Again, Harry Smith, Town Planner. The only thing I'd very quickly mention is the executive order grants, I believe, you, Chuck, the authority to determine whether paper submission of plans and documents can be waived or still required. Been sort of hearing other communities sort of think about how to do this and other boards in town, and it would probably make sense, absent any desire on the commission's part to get paper copies delivered to them still, to require the submittal of one full-size paper copy and a digital submission as well. I don't know if there's anything in the order that allows the commission to require a digital submission, but I think we can strongly encourage it and suggest that if someone doesn't submit the application digitally and we are forced to scan all the documents into the computer, that might delay the consideration of their application. So that would be one way to handle it. So I don't know what the commission's feeling are individually. Do you still want paper copies delivered to you so you can see what is being proposed on a set of plans? Are you comfortable getting them digitally? And we can work out some of the logistics of that a little more carefully. So, we have the Dropbox available, so we can sort of coach you all through how to access that. And we can also, think about this on another night when it's not so late. So I just wanted to bring it up.
Okay, Chuck Anders, Chair. I think first of all, we definitely want to ask the applicants to submit stuff digitally, just to make it easier for you. Now we're required to put it on the Dropbox, and to avoid that step. So definitely get them, request them, or to submit it digitally.
Yeah.
And then I think it's an individual preference for individual members. I'm spoiled because I still work in an office and I can print stuff out, and sometimes it's better. I look at things better, but I also look at it digitally. So, but I don't know what people think, and again, we don't have to decide that right now. So, anyone else?
If I could make one suggestion, this is Joe Chadwick. If everything comes to us as bound searchable PDFs, that would be just fabulous. If they were bookmarked, I'd almost make that I make a requirement to have them bookmarked if they're going to be bound.
All right. Again, Harry Smith, Town Planner. I'm not really familiar with that, so maybe we can talk about that offline, but it makes sense to me. So it'd be a way to index the plans, so you could, it would have an index of what each document is, each sheet, what it consists of. So you wouldn't, is that essentially what it is? It would be one document of plans.
In other words, you would have, say, 5 plans.
Yeah.
All be bound into one PDF file.
Right.
And there would be a bookmark feature in PDF that you could use to go from plan to plan to plan, so that during the course of a discussion or a presentation, you'd only have to pull up one file and manipulate that file through the bookmarks, rather than have to go through a file manager to figure out which plan you're going to pull up.
Okay. So something like the tabs in the bottom of a spreadsheet, so you just click from one to the other? A little bit?
Kind of. That's kind of the thing.
Right. I think I got the gist of it. Thank you. That makes sense, and I can explore that. And again, this probably would be a cajoling type of operation with the applicants, and I could certainly reach out to the frequent flyers and make sure they know what the commission's really looking for.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Great. Any other commission members have thoughts about that at this time? Again, we're not, other than requesting the applicant to do something.
I see Paul Higgins is, I don't know, right now. Never mind.
Marcy Paluzzi here. I know I was looking to try to find the Dropbox during this meeting and I couldn't get there. So it would be nice to have a PDF, because I know I can still be on camera and hear you and be looking at files on the screen if I want to look at something, during the meeting. So I would prefer to have a workable file that, was all combined, like Joe mentioned.
Yeah. Again, Harry Smith, town planner. I mean, this is really a work in progress. Caitlin and I both saw in a webinar, this morning, a feature that was used by the city of New Haven, which was quite interesting. It was based on a ArcGIS product and had a very nice, easy to use visual display and a way to organize plans. And we can explore that, see if that's something that we could use and other options. So there's certainly are ways to make it easier and work better, be more functional.
Great. Okay. Chucky, Anders Chair, anything else, Harry?
I'd just like to again welcome Caitlin, and we're so happy to have you aboard, and look forward to hearing from you a little bit more at future meetings.
Great. Thank Caitlin. It was Chucky, Anders Chair again. Great to have you. Glad you're here. You get to have more fun. What can we say?
Thank you.
Anything else? Chucky, Anders Chair, anything else from anyone? Not someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Marcy Paluzzi, make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Marcy. Is there a second?
Joe Vayuso, second.
Joe Vayuso, second. Do I have to do the roll call? John, are you in favor?
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Joe Chadwick? Joe Chadwick is muting. Joe, are you?
Joe left.
Like twice.
Yeah.
Had one foot out the door.
Yeah. Joe Vayuso?
Joe Vayuso, approved.
Marcy?
Marcy Paluzzi approves.
Chuck, I also approve. Okay, great. Okay, thanks everyone. 3-hour meeting, whatever.
All right.
Do better next time.
Bye-bye.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.